Deep in the heart of the Pacific Northwest, nestled between towering evergreen trees and cradled by rugged cliffs, there lies a small, seemingly idyllic fishing village named Blackwater Bay. A chilling tale lurked, a story that sent shivers down the spines of even the hardiest fishermen who dared to brave the murky waters. The story begins with an old, seasoned fisherman named Elias Thompson. Elias was known far and wide as the grizzled patriarch of Blackwater Bay, having spent more years at sea than on land. His weathered face and gnarled hands were the scars of countless encounters with the elements. While his eyes held the weight of untold maritime stories, Elias, despite his hard exterior, was a man who thrived on the warmth of camaraderie. Every evening, he'd gather the younger generation of fishermen around a blazing bonfire, their faces aglow in its flickering light, and spin them tales of. One stormy autumn night, as rain lashed against the windows of the village's lone tavern and wind howled through the dense forest, Elias told a tale that would become etched into the souls of those who listened. One stormy autumn night, as rain lashed against the windows of the village's lone tavern and wind howled through the dense forest, Elias told a tale that would become etched into the souls of those who listened. The haunting of Blackwater Bay, he began, his voice barely audible above the tempest. It was 30 years ago, on a night just like this, that I was out fishing with my crew. We had been chasing a school of tuna far from the coast, determined to bring back a grand haul that would ensure our families were well fed through the harsh winter. The sea was wild that night, waves towering like angry giants, and wind howling like vengeful spirits. Elias paused, stoking the fire with a weathered stick, before continuing. As we hauled in our nets, we began to notice something peculiar, he said, his eyes distant as he recalled the chilling memory. In the midst of our catch, writhing and thrashing, was a fish unlike any we had ever seen before. Its scales were a shimmering obsidian black, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. It seemed to be whispering, calling out to us in a voice only we could hear, like the eerie song of a siren. The room fell silent as Elias's audience hung on every word. Curiosity got the best of us, Elias continued, and we decided to keep that strange fish. We wrapped it in a tattered net and placed it in a bucket of seawater, hoping to examine it further back in the village. But as we made our way back to shore, the night grew colder, and the air felt thick with the knees. It was as if a shadow had fallen over the sea, blotting out the moon and stars. Elias's voice quivered as he recalled the next part of the story. When we reached the shore, he said, we noticed a group of villagers had gathered on the beach, their faces pale with fear. You shouldn't have brought that fish here, they said. It's an omen, a harbinger of doom. We paid them no heed, dismissing their warnings as old superstitions. But that night, as we lay down to sleep in our cottages, a strange and eerie melody began to fill the air. Elias whispered, his eyes locked with those of the younger fishermen. It was the haunting song of that black fish. It echoed through the village, weaving its spell over our minds. We couldn't resist its pull. As Elias recounted the events of that fateful night, the room seemed to grow colder, and the crackling firelight danced with ominous shadows. The audience clung to their seats, captivated by the tale of the haunting fish. We were drawn back to the shore, Elias continued, his voice trembling. And there, by the light of the moon, we saw something that still haunts my dreams. The sea had become a swirling maelstrom, a black abyss that seemed to stretch on forever. In the center of that vortex was the fish, larger and more menacing than ever. It thrashed and writhed, its glowing eyes fixed upon us. And as we watched, the fish transformed into something far more sinister. Elias's voice dropped to a hushed whisper. It became a figure, a shadowy, grotesque creature with long, spindly limbs and a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth, he said. It rose from the sea, its form a grotesque amalgamation of fish and nightmare. The villagers, who had gathered on the shore, screamed in terror and fled. But we were paralyzed, unable to tear our eyes away from the abomination before us. Elias described how the creature began to sing, its eerie melody now a cacophony of madness that burrowed into their minds like 1,000 needles. He spoke of how they were compelled to walk into the inky waters, drawn inexorably towards the creature, their bodies succumbing to an unnatural cold that seeped into their bones. "We waded into the Black Sea," Elias whispered, his eyes glassy with fear, and as we drew closer to the creature, its mouth yawned wide, and it devoured us one by one, tearing us apart in a grotesque feast. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the feeling of being torn asunder, my screams merging with the horrifying song of the fish. Elias's story ended with the chilling image of the monstrous fish creature feasting on the hapless fisherman. The room was deathly silent, the fire's crackle the only sound. The younger fishermen sat wide-eyed, their faces pale, their skepticism replaced by a haunting dread. In the years that followed, Elias's story became a legend in Blackwater Bay. The village was shrouded in an atmosphere of superstition and fear, and fishermen began to avoid the waters where the haunting had occurred. But the curse of the black fish endured, became commonplace. As time passed, the village of Blackwater Bay slowly withered away. The once thriving fishing community now stood as a shadow of its former self, its population dwindling, and its spirit broken. Those who had once been skeptical of Elias's story now clung to it as an explanation for the misfortunes that had befallen their once prosperous home. Elias himself, now a frail and elderly man, became a recluse, haunted by the memories of that cursed night. He would often sit by the shore, staring out at the dark expanse of water, searching for some sign of the monstrous fish creature. The legend of the haunting of Blackwater Bay continued to evolve over the years. Some said that the creature was the embodiment of the village's collective sins, while others believed it to be a vengeful spirit that had been wronged by the fishermen. A few even claimed that the fish creature was an ancient deity, angered by the intrusion of humans into its domain. Despite the passage of time, the village's inhabitants still lived in fear, avoiding the sea and its mysteries. The curse of the black fish cast a long, cold shadow over Blackwater Bay, a place once known for its warmth and camaraderie. As the years went by, Elias grew older, and his health began to fail. It was clear to the villagers that he did not have much time left. On a quiet, moonlit night, the fishermen gathered around Elias one last time, their faces etched with sadness and curiosity. "Elias," one of them asked, "is there a way to break the curse? To free our village from this eternal torment?" Elias, his eyes weary but filled with resolve, nodded slowly. "There may be a way," he whispered. "The fish creature, it spoke to me as we were drawn into the sea. It whispered of a forgotten pact, a promise that was broken by our ancestors. It seeks retribution, but it can be appeased." The fishermen leaned in, eager to hear more. Elias explained that the fish creature could only be appeased by a sacrificial offering. It required a tribute, a gesture of humility and remorse from the villagers to atone for the sins of their forefathers. The offering had to be made willingly and without fear, and it needed to be a symbol of their respect for the sea and the creatures that dwelled within it. The fishermen listened intently, their minds racing with thoughts of how they could make amends. Elias looked out at the dark, forbidding sea, and said, "You must choose a representative, a brave soul, who will make the offering to the fish creature. This person will carry the burden of our village's sins, and seek forgiveness from the depths of the ocean." The villagers discussed amongst themselves, and, after much deliberation, chose a young fisherman named Caleb, known for his courage and strong connection to the sea. He agreed to undertake the dangerous task, determined to lift the curse that had plagued Blackwater Bay for so long. As the night deepened, Caleb stood alone on the shore, a small, intricately crafted wooden boat in hand. The villagers had filled it with tokens of their remorse, shells, hand-carved figures, and heartfelt letters expressing their apologies to the sea. The boat bobbed gently on the dark waters, a beacon of hope in the moonlight. With a deep breath, Caleb pushed the boat into the sea, his heart heavy with the weight of his mission. He watched as it drifted away, guided by an unseen force, until it disappeared into the depths. The haunting song of the fish creature echoed one final time, mournful and accepting. Over the following days and weeks, the atmosphere in Blackwater Bay began to change. The villagers felt a newfound sense of peace, as if the curse had been lifted. Fishermen, who had long avoided the sea, began to venture out again, and the village slowly began to rebuild its sense of community. Elias, who had grown even frailer with time, passed away peacefully, his eyes finally free from the weight of the haunting tale he had carried for so long. As the villagers gathered to bid him farewell, they knew that they owed a debt of gratitude to the brave young fisherman who had made the ultimate offering. Blackwater Bay was reborn, and the haunting story of the black fish became a distant memory. The village once again thrived, its connection to the sea stronger than ever. And though the tale of the haunting would never be forgotten, it now served as a reminder of the importance of respect and reverence for the natural world. The haunting of Blackwater Bay had come to an end, replaced by a newfound understanding of the intricate balance between humanity and the mysterious forces of the deep. The village, once shrouded in fear, had learned to live in harmony with the sea, a lesson that would endure for generations to come. As the years passed, the story of Blackwater Bay continued to be passed down through the generations. The fishermen, now seasoned veterans of the sea, would gather their children around the fire, just as Elias had done with them, and tell the haunting tale of the black fish. They spoke of the courage of Caleb, the bravery of the villagers, and the importance of respecting the natural world. And so, the legend of the haunting of Blackwater Bay lived on, a reminder of the enduring power of a community's resolve, and the eternal connection between man and the sea.